welcome back to Beat the Lockdown, and welcome back to our Festival Face-Off segment. This week we are going to be talking through the festivals from 2005, and by the end of video 3, based on our choices, we'll be crowning what we deem to be the best festival of 2005. First of all, we'll start with playlist 1. And we'll go with Tom first. What were your 4 picks?
I had Foo Fighters, Best of You, Faithless, Mass Destruction, A Nothing, and Prodigy, Spitfire.
And Pete?
Is it meant to be 4?
Yeah.
Did Tom say 4?
Yeah.
Okay. I went with R.E.M. Leaving New York, Super Furry Animals, Golden Retriever, Pixies, Debaser, and Faithless, Mass Destruction.
Interesting. Okay, so my 4 picks were Foo Fighters, Best of You, Soulwax, E-Talking, Prodigy, Spitfire, and Franz Ferdinand, Do You Want To? Quite interested in that one, actually. I'm the one I'm really surprised that you both picked was Faithless. I wasn't expecting
that was my 4th pick, and there were for me it was between that and Spitfire, and I just listened to them both a couple of times, and I just thought, you know what out of those, if it had been a different Prodigy track, it might have been different, but out of those 2 tracks, I think I prefer Mass Destruction. I'd rather be listening / watching that than Spitfire.
Yeah.
It's weird because when I put the playlist together, you sent me the thing about Reasoners Treason, Pete, which we'll discuss in one of the other playlists about, there being quite dramatically different versions between the single and the album edit, and that's exactly the same with Mass Destruction. The album version is it doesn't have the whole kind of I'm trying to think how you can kind of put it. It's not as dancey. It's a lot more spoken word, and actually I think it's better. But yeah, I mean, I certainly don't have an issue with you both picking it. I was just very surprised that was one that both that got picked. And it's interesting because I thought there'd be a bit of love for the that White Stripes track, Blue Orchid.
I pretty much like the whole playlist except for A, which I think is an awful song. Yeah, I really like Blue Orchid, but it just there were too many other ones that are better. Or
I'll tell you what I found with Blue Orchid is when it first started playing, I was like, oh man, I've not heard this in a while. And then by about, I think, 2 minutes into the song, I was like, oh yeah, there's a reason why. I think it starts really well, and it's something I find a lot with some of the White Stripes stuff is I really, really like the musicality, but where the song goes, I find they quite often meander a little bit.
I just felt it was for a short song. I just felt it felt a bit long. Like, it's not a long song at all. It's like 2 minutes something, but it felt like it was dragging by the time I got to the end.
But that's what I mean, is I just don't feel like it has. It doesn't have enough variation within the music. It starts off really well. I love the guitar at the beginning, and I like the way the song starts, and then it kind of gets into it, and it just stays at that sort of level.
It's just a short, sharp blast, and it doesn't really go anywhere. But it doesn't really outstay its welcome either. That's why I didn't really pick it. It's just I like it, but it's nowhere. It's not even in the top.
I mean, going to something else you mentioned there, Pete, as well. I had the exact same thing with that A track. Well, no, not the exact same thing. Sorry, but I had the same sensation of when the riff came in at the beginning, I was like, oh, hang on, I'd forgotten about this song. And then when he started singing, I was like, oh yeah, I remember why I don't listen to this song anymore. Like,
I really liked it. I had the album that came off. What was that? 99, 2000, something like that. And that is long gone for my CD collection.
Yeah, there was a phase, wasn't there, of this kind of
it's got a good riff, but lyrically, I think it's pretty bad.
It's yeah. I mean, the lyrics aren't great, but it's the singing voice that I can't get along with. You know, they were relatively popular at the time, so you know, I'm obviously, that's my opinion, but the riff, I think the opening riff is so good. Actually, sort of not. I'm not saying that you know it's almost Rage-esque in the sense that it's kind of got that real power to it. And then he starts singing, and it's got that whole kind of like mixer deck sound in the background that became a big thing in that kind of rap metal phase that came along really, where I think it was, you know, like Limp Bizkit and trying to think of other bands that kind of
Linkin Park had decks in it.
Well,
for
yeah,
a while, didn't they?
but that was the thing, is that I think a lot of bands wanted to replicate what Linkin Park were producing at the time, and the reason Linkin Park was so good and carried on for so long is because they perfected it, whereas a lot of people, it just sounded bad. And it's not aged well either, that style of music. I mean, looking at the rest of the list, I mean,
I'm a little surprised. Well, actually, I'm not surprised because Leaving New York by R.E.M. is actually one of my favourite tracks, like favourite songs, flat out. And so I didn't think either of you would pick it, but at the same time, I'm still kind of annoyed that neither of you did.
Well, I mean, this kind of takes us to our decision, really, because I mean, we've got three which are definitely through, which are Foo Fighters' Best of You, Prodigy Spitfire, and go on.
That is where, for me, is where the Foo Fighters just became the blandest band of all time. Best of You.
Really?
I couldn't agree with you less. I think a big part of that song for me, and again, this is another, we talked about this in previous Festival Face-Off playlists, is putting yourself in a live environment and hearing these songs live. And for me, Best of You is part of one of, if not the best live segment I've ever seen a band do. On the Best of You tour, Foo Fighters would come out to the opening riff and then play the full track of In Your Honor.
That was a better track.
Yeah, I agree. Go straight into All My Life. Yeah, straight into All My Life, and then straight into this, completely breathlessly, no gap, no nothing. And anyone who saw them on that tour will tell you, by the time you got to 12, 13 minutes into watching them live on that particular tour, you were like, oh my God, what am I witnessing? This is insane. Because the amount of energy.
I did see that, and I probably wouldn't have said that.
Yeah, see, I honestly don't understand how you could say that. I genuinely don't, because the level of energy they had.
I probably enjoyed that. I'm sure I enjoyed seeing Foo Fighters. It's probably like the third or fourth time they played Reading. Yeah. I certainly see people doing Best of You. Yeah, they had the banners that came down.
It was Reading. Yeah.
And yeah, it was good, but certainly for me, that track has never really done a lot for me. Yeah.
I don't disagree with you in terms of the album. I wasn't a big fan of that album. There are a couple of real big tunes on that, and I think In Your Honor, the opening track, is the best track on that album. But I do disagree with regards to this song. I think this song is an absolute anthem.
I was just looking up from when we went to see them at the London Stadium a couple of years back.
Yeah.
And I was curious, just from what you said about how it started for the Best of You tour.
Yeah.
The way they started with the 3 tracks. And then with this one, they set up as All My Life, Learn to Fly, and then The Pretender, which again, I think is better.
Yeah.
But they actually finished the set before the encore with Best of You. So it's definitely a song that when you see them live, when you go to a gig of theirs, that you don't end a set. like that on a song that isn't going to evoke a reaction from the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, for me, one thing that was noticeable from probably the album before this onwards is they were writing songs to sing and play in stadiums. They were no longer writing albums for the sake of going, right, okay, what do we want to get out of this album? They were writing an album to play at big stadium gigs. And it was, I mean, I can't remember the exact wording of what Dave Grohl said at that London Stadium gig, but he kept reinforcing the whole kind of, you guys happy you've come to a big rock show, all this kind of thing. And I think that's the thing. They've become a band that are built around playing stadiums across the world. Whether or not that diminishes slightly their musicality, whether or not that slightly diminishes their reputation as an original band, that's up for debate. But I think Best of You is still up there as a good track of something they've created. And as a live track, I think it's exceptional.
I love it.
It's a decent track, but it's just, I would place it probably, what's got the 14 tracks here, I'd probably place it somewhere like number 10.
Right.
You guys...
in your listing then, where would Soul Wax come from? Because I knew the minute I saw that on the list that it would be up in James's top 4. But
Soul Wax for me? Since I've never really rated Soul Wax as a band, particularly, they're all right. As too many DJs, I think they're great. But Soul Wax, the band, were just pretty. They were there.
Yeah.
And Jay, is Soul Wax one of the ones that you and my brothers like talk about a lot together?
Yeah, because I mean, Soul Wax had been pioneers in that kind of probably prior to anyway the indie disco age of, you know, too many DJs had been doing these mixtapes for a number of years where they were mashing up songs. You know, that age of when I think it was MTV started doing these mashups. People are like, oh my god, this is amazing! Like, how have they thought to do this? And like, too many DJs have been doing that for probably about 6, 7, 8 years at that point. And releasing these absolutely amazing sort of bootleg mashup 2-hour sets. Soul Wax was their sort of foray into being a band, and Soul Wax did a lot of that element, did a lot of remixes to really popular indie tunes. They had a version of Standing in the Way of Control, which was really popular. They had a really good version of Bonkers that was really good as well. And often if you went to like an indie club, you would almost always hear at least one song that was a Soul Wax remix, because they would sort of elevate songs that maybe didn't quite fit in the sort of dance arena of being able to dance to an indie tune, and they would create a great remix to it. And that's what got me into Soul Wax, you know, hearing these remixes. E-Talking is another one that's a bit of a weird one, because they released 2 albums sort of back to back. I forget what the first one's called, but the second one's called Night Sessions or something like that. And the original one is more of this kind of stuff. And then they redid a lot of the tunes on the second album, which were dancier. And I actually prefer the other version, but it's like 8 minutes long. And I knew if I put that on a playlist, you guys wouldn't listen to it. So yeah, I put this one on. And the reason I picked it is because I just love the sort of guitar part in this. I just think like the way it sort of comes in, okay, you have to wait maybe 30 seconds or so, but the guitar part in this particularly, I just think is excellent. And the bass element to it.
I'm least familiar with, which is why it's I've probably not got any kind of affection for it. So yeah.
But generally, their solo stuff, I wasn't a big fan. Like, it's okay, but I love, as DJs, I think they're exceptional. I saw them as Too Many DJs once I really wish I'd seen them more, but I saw them as too many DJs once and they did not disappoint. I agree with you about the REM track, Pete. Like, that was probably my number 5, and depending on when we'd done it, that might have even been as high as 2. This has fluctuated dramatically throughout the week, this list for me. But yeah, I mean, going back to what I was just saying, sorry, we definitely picked the Foos, definitely picked the Prodigy, and definitely picked Faithless. So if we go to our usual plan of ones that have got single choices, we have 1 for Soulwax, 1 for Franz Ferdinand, 1 for A, 1 for REM, 1 for Super Furry Animals, and 1 for Pixies. So if you weren't picking A, Tom, which of those would you pick?
Probably the Pixies, I would say. A lot of the other ones just didn't really sing to me.
Okay.
No, you can't like Golden Retriever. Those tribal drums, and it's so short as well.
So yeah, Pete, what would your pick be between?
Out of those 5 you just said, 3 of them are mine.
Yeah, but if you weren't picking those 3,
yeah, well, I'm not particularly happy picking either of the 2 that are left over.
There's 3 left over. There's A, Soulwax, and Franz Ferdinand.
If I had to pick one of those, it'd probably be Franz Ferdinand, but I'm not happy about it.
Okay. If I had to pick one, it would be REM. I think given the reluctance you had, Pete, we won't forward Franz Ferdinand, but what we will do is we'll put the Pixies through and we'll put through REM as well. So we'll take 5 from that list because we can't decipher between them. Right, so before we end this episode, we'll just go through which festivals they were from. So Foo Fighters that year were from Reading and Leeds. Prodigy were from V Festival. Faithless were from Isle of Wight. Pixies were from Reading and Leeds. And REM were from Isle of Wight. So we've got 2 for Reading and Leeds. So both of their picks, both of their tracks got picked this week in this particular playlist. Both of the Isle of Wights got taken from this one as well. And we've got 1 from the V Festival. So Reading and Leeds and Isle of Wight have definitely taken a hefty lead over most of the rest of the pack. Apart from V Festival, we've got 1 from that list. One thing that is different for this particular week is we have lost Creamfields and we have Wireless Festival this week. So, okay, so there we go. So they are our 5 tracks that we've moved on because we couldn't pick 4. We've gone with 5. So we've got Foo Fighters, Best of You, Prodigy, Spitfire, Faithless, Mass Destruction, Pixies, Debaser, and REM, Leaving New York. So there we go. Please watch on for episode 2.